Tesco's former CEO Philip Clarke is being interviewed under caution by the Serious Fraud Office over the £326 million shortfall in profits discovered last year. His testimony could later be used as evidence in court. Joining me is Barrister Alex Rooke to discuss what this means. Alex, what exactly is the case against Philip Clarke?
We know he's been summoned into the Serious Fraud Office, which may be because they want to interview him compulsorily. The Serious Fraud Office has got the power effectively to compel you to answer questions. If you don't answer questions, then they can take you to court for not answering questions. That said, if you do answer questions, they can't use your answers in proceedings against you. What they want to talk to him about is not entirely clear. We know that he resigned because Tesco appeared to be doing very badly. Shortly after he left the room, there was a bad smell of bad accounting. So Tesco had been having their accounts done by PricewaterhouseCoopers. They went out, in came Deloitte, and effectively it seemed that there'd been this habit of getting the figures wrong. That, what you're talking about was $250 million shortfall on their predicted profits, which ended up being nothing anyway. And it's now thought to be about $333 million. So there's $333 million discrepancy.
And this investigation, is this targeting purely Mr. Clarke or are other people involved?
From what I've heard, when Mr. Clarke left, and it was very much jumped rather than pushed by all accounts, I read that he was resigned, so resigned there being used as a passive verb, if you like. Very shortly afterwards, they suspended, I think, 9 people and later dismissed 6 of them.
So what makes this a criminal investigation rather than a civil one?
Prior to 2007, 2008, because your average criminal barrister, solicitor, criminal lawyer, politician, were perhaps not as economically literate as we were before the financial crisis. Now there is perhaps a big awareness that those who run big companies can have a very adverse effect as they line their own pockets potentially on the rest of us. If government has to shore it up, if pension funds, which we all pay into, end up plummeting in value because blue chip PLC has bent accounting practices. We also know Serious Fraud Office has had a little bit of a shot in the arm of late with various new powers that it's being given, and its director, David Green, used to be in charge of customs, used to be an independent barrister. He seems to be taking the view that corporate misgovernance, if that's the correct word, is something the SFO should be going after. Previously, it was a little bit more bribery only, and as we know from the news, they weren't really very successful with things like the British Aerospace, Saudi Arabian connection.
So if gross misconduct is found during Philip Clarke's leadership, will he be forced to pay back his $1.2 million payoff? And where do the legalities stand on this?
Well, on his $1.2 million payoff, we know that Tesco, once he'd left the room a few weeks later, said, "Hey, Philip, come back, we want the cash." Philip kicked up another big stink about that, and his contractual entitlement, it seems, made it quite plain he could hang on to it. Now, Tesco felt a little bit sore about that. His replacement, in his contract, the terms were much tighter. So he, if he's a naughty boy, is not going to be going away with a pocket full of cash. In terms of if he is eventually, let's say, found guilty or of something or adjudicated one way or another in a fair process, to have been either doing things he shouldn't or to have been massively incompetent, then there may well be the ability for Tesco to go after him to get his money.
But if he does have to pay this £1.2 million back, could this set a precedent for other people who've found to be fraudulent in terms of bonuses, perhaps?
Generally speaking, the rule is that if somebody's done something criminal, the money's hypothetically going to be whipped off them. If they've been negligent, there's always other solutions through the courts based on contracts or duty of care.
And if he is convicted of fraud, what other consequences can he expect?
Depends how much fraud, but we've recently seen the banker in the LIBOR scandal, who was obviously not the CEO of a blue chip company, and he got an eye-watering 14 years inside. He'll do 7. He will, I imagine, also be put through the proceeds of Crime Act procedures, which will turn him upside down and empty out his trouser pocket.
But we are looking at losses of £6.4 billion for Tesco. So when you're looking at figures like that, surely somebody needs to be held accountable. Could this be a scapegoat situation?
Drying off my patch, we do know with Tesco they had huge problems with valuation of their land holdings, huge problems with their endeavours abroad. I think the only place where they haven't lost money is South Korea. They've had to sell off their holdings in South Korea. We know the likes of Aldi and Lidl have been giving them problems. We know, or believe from the newspapers, that the margins in the supermarket game are just not what they used to be. So there's a host of other reasons to explain away $6 billion, but we are left with a little bit of a hole of about $1/3 billion, which at the moment seems to be going back to the board, as it were, of Tesco at that point.